be strong.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back in Bung Tomo channels. Today we will learn about abstract in the research paper or research thesis that you have to do in your research paper. Before we start, let's say basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, so what is an abstract? Abstract An abstract is a summary of a research paper or thesis or your journal article, which contains of approximately 150 until 250 words and is formatted with single space. Abstract is usually placed on the beginning of the paper or thesis after the details. It helps a reader to figure out the paper's purpose. Yes, usually abstract wrote after the research finished, and it is a summary of your research work. An abstract is used by a reader to understand, to know the paper that you have done to the work. So here I will show you a video about the explanation of abstract and briefly example of that. Please read carefully the outline of abstract. Here we go.
The abstract is usually the last thing we write for a research paper or for a research thesis, but it is the first thing that people tend to read. So let's do it right. Here's how to write an abstract for research journal papers. Most research journals require the abstract to be within 150 words. Granted, some journals might prefer for the abstract to be really concise, so maybe within 100 words. Other journals might allow for longer abstracts, up to 200 or even 250 words. But for most research papers, the abstract should be within 150 words. And this means a typical abstract should be something like just 4 or 5 sentences, concisely summarizing the research study. Now let's see how we should write these 4 or 5 sentences. The first sentence usually tells what the research objective was. Let's look at a few examples. So in this paper's abstract, we wrote, this article examined how company restaurant service influence patrons' emotional states and behavioral intentions. Here's another example. We wrote, this study examined how work stress was related to employees' upward influence behavior. And a third example, this study investigated what hotel employees preferred as team-building activities. So in all 3 examples, the first sentence is just clearly describing what the research study set out to investigate. So that's the first sentence of the abstract. The second sentence would typically describe the research method that was used in the study. Generally speaking, 1 or 2 sentences would be enough to clearly summarize or describe the research methodological approach that was used in a particular study. Let's look at those 3 examples again. We start with the ServiceGate paper. Using data collected from 149 guests at a company restaurant of the Dutch government organization in The Hague, it was found that, so on and so forth. So in this case, it is actually just half a sentence, briefly describing the source of the data. The second example was about work stress. Data were collected from 170 employees in a large logistics company in China. And the third example about team building, data were collected from 102 employees in a 4-star hotel in the Netherlands. In all 3 examples, the research method was very standard, relying on self-report survey data from employees, so the descriptions of the methods in these examples were all very brief. But for studies with a more complex research method, one might need perhaps 2 longer sentences to properly summarize the research method. But generally speaking, if your research method is standard and straightforward, then probably 1 sentence is enough. So that's typically the second sentence of the abstract, summarizing the research method. After that, we will probably need a couple of sentences to summarize key findings and conclusions. Let's go to the examples. In our ServiceGate paper, we wrote, using those data, we found that guest perception of company restaurant ServiceGate influenced their emotional states and their behavioral intentions. Further factor analysis and structural equation modeling showed this and that. In the stress paper we wrote, results showed that stress was positively related to heart upward influence tactics. Furthermore, certain employee satisfaction dimensions were found to be moderators. And in the last example of team building, we wrote, results showed that socializing was the most preferred team building intervention, whereas outdoor fun was the least preferred by employees. Other factor analysis reduced 11 dimensions into 5 factors, something like that. So as we can see, one would typically devote 2 or perhaps 3 sentences to summarize key findings and conclusions in the abstract, because those are probably and arguably the most important elements of the study. In all 3 examples, we ended the abstract simply by stating that theoretical and practical implications were discussed, but we did not summarize our discussion in the abstract though. Naturally, below the abstract, we presented the keywords. And that's the abstract for most research papers in its standard format. It is important to quickly note, however, that different journals' requirements for the abstract could be a little bit different. For example, this journal, Journal of Management Development, where I recently submitted a paper, they require the abstract to look a little bit differently. Instead of having the abstract written as one paragraph, as the 3 examples we just saw, this journal asks for the abstract to come with little subheadings. First, they use the subheading purpose for the authors to present the study's key research objective. And then, using the subheading design methodology approach, you summarize your research methodological approach. After that, under the subheading findings, that's where we present our key findings and results. And then we have originality/value. This is where we have to tell how valuable our findings, conclusions, and implications are. And finally, keywords, which is the same as before. But even in this case, where the journal is using a different format for the abstract, the general components of the abstract would essentially be very similar to the first format we talked about. The abstract is still a summary of the study in very clear and concise language. The abstract needs to be carefully written. Generally speaking, the abstract is the last thing we write, but it is the first thing that people read. As an example, when I read a research journal, I first read the abstract of a study in order to see whether or not this study is of relevance or interest to me, so that I could decide whether or not I'm going to read the study more carefully. When I grade a student's research thesis or research papers, first I read the abstract, because reading the abstract would enable me to quickly understand what this research study is all about. And when I'm browsing through the search results on our university's academic databases, I read the abstracts of the studies found in order to see which one is useful or relevant for my research. So this goes to show how important an abstract is for a study, and that's why we should all write our abstracts properly and carefully, and now you know how. The next time you submit an abstract, it better be good.
Yes, maybe this video a little bit faster, cukup cepat ya membacanya, tapi kita perlu latihan untuk membaca dengan bahasa Inggris gitu ya. Cara membaca dengan bahasa Inggris itu adalah dengan menggunakan subtitle dengan bahasa Inggris juga. Kalau menggunakan subtitle dengan bahasa Indonesia juga agak kesulitan, karena kita nanti akan kesulitan dalam menerjemahkan Inggris kepada bahasa Indonesia ya. Jadi lebih baiknya memang subtitlenya pakai bahasa Inggris. Baru nanti kalau memang tidak mengetahui artinya, baru we can open in the dictionary. Okay. Jadi pada hakikatnya abstrak itu adalah sebuah ringkasan dari tulisan yang telah kita buat dari hasil penelitian kita, yang biasanya ditaruh dalam bagian pertama dalam sebuah jurnal artikel ya. Karena biasanya para pembaca itu melihat abstrak dulu dibandingkan dengan tulisannya. Karena dari abstrak itu kita bisa mengecek, kita bisa melihat, kita bisa mengetahui apa maksud dari tulisan dari si peneliti itu, gitu ya. Jadi kita sesuaikan dengan riset kita sesuaikan dengan tulisan kita. Gitu ya. Kalau memang tidak sesuai dengan relevansi dengan tulisan kita, maka ngapain kita baca secara full gitu ya, dari introductions, methods, and then result and discussion afterwards is the conclusion. Why? Gitu ya. Kalau memang kita bisa membaca dari abstrak saja, tidak perlu membacanya secara keseluruhan. Maka bagian ini adalah bagian yang terpenting dalam jurnal ilmiah, gitu ya. So please be attention. Perhatikan juga ketika menulis abstrak, tidak semua abstrak itu sama bentuknya. Yang tadi diterangkan dalam video. Jadi abstrak itu Ada yang namanya abstract descriptions, ada yang abstract informative. Kalau abstract description biasanya terdiri dari introductions, research objective, and then research method ya. Jadi pendahuluan, tujuan, sama metodologi. Itu deskriptif. Tapi kalau misalnya abstract informatif biasanya terdiri dari introductions, methods, result and decision, and conclusions ya, INMRAD. Biasanya disingkatnya seperti itu. Oke, let's give you an example of abstract. A simple abstract parts, bagian dari abstrak itu biasanya yang terdiri dari 4 bagian gitu ya. Biasanya result and discussion jadi satu. Nanti terakhirnya adalah conclusion. Please be note that abstrak itu tidak sama dengan copy paste dari tulisan kalian. Maksudnya adalah kumpulan dari pendahuluan di copy, ditaruh di bagian awal. Kemudian metodologi di copy, kemudian taruh di bagian setelah pendahuluan. Kemudian hasilnya apa, taruh lagi. Kesimpulannya, jadi tulisannya itu sama antara isinya dengan abstraknya, hanya di copy paste. Tidak boleh seperti itu. Biasanya abstrak itu ditulis dengan bagian-bagian yang biasanya independen, jadi terpisah dari tulisan utama. Maksudnya independen adalah biasanya menggunakan parafrase, kata yang lain yang maksudnya sama. Paham ya? Jadi tidak harus sama persis dengan apa yang sudah ditulis dalam hal pendahuluan, tujuan, manfaat, metodologi, dan seterusnya. Tidak boleh di copy paste, tapi menggunakan kata yang berbeda agar apa? Para pembacanya lebih tahu maksudnya gitu ya. Termasuk dalam menuliskan keywords. Keyword gunakan kata-kata yang sering digunakan dalam tulisan kalian. Jadi pada umumnya abstrak itu memang terdiri dari 3 bagian sih secara general ya. Introduction, methods, and results. Gitu ya, 3. Tapi kalau secara general, introductions, material and methods, result discussion, and conclusion. Ya, oke. Here I will give you an example of abstract that's usually put in the research paper. For the first abstract, usually put introduction, pendahuluan. Ini adalah contoh dari tumbuhan yang ada di Australia ya. Many plants in Australia have their seeds buried in order for the species to survive. The seeds start to germinate under the soil at certain temperature. Jadi ini menerangkan bibit tanaman yang kita dikubur dalam tanah biasanya untuk survive ya dari kebakaran. And the second one is hypothesis, material, and methods. Seeds of Acacia terminale and Dilvinia floribunda were examined in this experiment. Jadi menghipotesis dulu ya, memperkirakan dulu ya. Kemudian ada juga material and methods ya. Seeds of the 2 species were treated in hot and cold water, jadi dengan air panas sama air dingin, and left to start germinating. Ya, jadi baru mulai untuk ditumbuhkan gitu ya. Baru setelah itu adalah research. Please be note that biasanya abstrak itu menggunakan kata past tense. Tahu past tense ya, kata lampau. Kenapa? Karena biasanya abstrak itu pasti penelitiannya sudah selesai, have complete done ya. Jadi kalau sudah selesai baru menuliskan abstrak. Kalau proposal penulisan biasanya tidak ada abstrak duluan ya. Abstrak itu ditulis ketika sudah selesai penelitiannya, baru menuliskan abstrak gitu ya. Nah, kemudian hasilnya adalah Acacia terminal sought. Sought ini kata past tense ya, karena memang sudah selesai penelitiannya. A significant response in germination after the hot water treatment, while Tillinia floribunda didn't. Neither seed sought respond in germination. Jadi ini menerangkan tentang hasilnya. Baru setelah itu adalah conclusions atau discussions ya, kesimpulannya. Ya, secara umum seperti itu ya. Ada introductions, material methods, and result and discussions as a conclusion sebagai kesimpulannya. Mari kita coba latihan. Di sini ada beberapa tulisan. Coba atur ulang tulisan ini menjadi mana yang susunan yang paling tepat gitu ya. Contoh yang pertama, jadi ini ada satu paragraf pertama, ini paragraf kedua, ini paragraf ketiga. Mana yang material and methods, mana yang result and discussions, mana yang introductions. Put on the fill blanks to complete the dialogues ya. Jadi untuk melengkapi dialog ini atau untuk membenarkan ya the correct answer ya. Jadi kalau yang A ini material and methods, B ini adalah research and discussion, C ini adalah introductions. Let's we see the sentence. The southwest shrub, juniper communis, juniper berry, has many significant medicinal value in the Native American culture that hasn't been proven scientifically. One of the popular use of juniper berries is side from, ini biasanya pendahuluan ya kalau dari ini. This study focus on, ini tujuannya. Berarti ini adalah introduction. Introduction tadi yang C ya, makanya kita cari ini C ya. Plus we go on to the next pages. 50 grams of fresh berries was collected and dried for 5 days and is placed in steel tanks with 100 milliliter of water for steam distillation using the Flint scientific borosilicate. Borosilica kit gather the, ini metode ya biasanya. Gather the extract oil and dilute 70% in 3 separate containers to be transferred into spray bottles. Testing involved, ya ini methods. Material and methods ya, ada bahan, alat, dan metode. Maka kita put here as A ya, material and methods. And the last, after testing and comparing the results, the commercial insect repellent significantly showed that, menunjukkan bahwa it is a better insect repellent compared to the G commonest dilute essential oil. Ini menunjukkan hasil ya, result and discussion. So we have to put here B, result and discussion. Maka contohnya, maka mahasiswanya adalah CAP ya. This is for the first examinations that take from this website. The second paragraph ya. Let's we see, ada ini ya, sama seperti tadi. Yang A itu adalah result and discussion, B introduction, oh ini ganti susunannya. Ingat, A itu result and discussion, B introduction, dan C adalah purpose of study materials and methods. Jadi sama ya hasilnya, introduction, materials, methods, and result discussion. Tapi ini adalah A, B, C. Kita lihat di sini. Parental divorce can often have a negative impact on the children, adolescents, and emerging adults in the family unit. With the additions of changing transition, such as college, parental divorce began to create difficulties for those who do not have the social support they need to adapt. Ini sepertinya adalah apa? Introduction ya. Introduction tadi apa? B. Ini put B. The purpose of this study, the purpose of this study was ya, kata past tense, to examine the relation between parental divorce and adjustment in college students, with the goal of identifying difference in students who came from intact and divorced families. Jadi menganalisis perbedaan culture ya, dari mahasiswa yang dari orang tuanya yang divorce, cerai, sama yang masih full hubungannya. Apakah mereka semangat belajarnya tinggi? Ini adalah tujuannya. Berarti yang C ya, purpose of study, material methods. Ya. Overall result, ada kata result di sini. Bisa tulisan result, analyze juga ya. Indicate no significant difference. Jadi tidak ada perbedaan secara signifikan ya, as a whole and specifically for gender on college ya. Berarti ini adalah A, result discussion. And this is the last examination, the last example for you to practice. Ya, coba latihan di sini, nanti taruh yang mana yang urutannya ya, mana yang introductions, mana yang material methods, mana yang result discussions. Ya, pada umumnya untuk abstrak sendiri terdiri dari 3 macam ya, introductions, material methods, and result discussions. Dan biasanya simple, ringkas, tidak begitu menggunakan bahasa yang berbelit-belit, karena para pembaca menggunakan abstrak kalian sebagai patokan, sebagai panduan tentang penjelasan dari penelitian kalian. Kalau memang sesuai, mereka akan menggunakan tulisan kalian, akan mensintasi tulisan kalian sehingga tulisan kalian ada bermanfaatnya. Jadi nanti esai kalian high index-nya akan naik, gitu tujuannya. Tapi kalau misal ternyata penelitian kalian itu tidak cocok atau tidak sesuai dengan apa yang dimaksud para pembaca, maka dia akan skip. Sudah membaca abstrak saja biasanya, tidak perlu membaca secara keseluruhan. Yes, that is important of abstract. Biasanya digunakan pada bagian awal penelitian. Okay. I think that so many videos in YouTube you can put one of them to practice to write abstract. Ya, cara menggunakan abstrak. Biasanya kalau di Elsevier sendiri, jurnal ya, salah satu publisher yang terkenal di Scopus, ada Elsevier, ada Springer, mereka menggunakan graphical abstract. Apa itu graphical abstract? Abstrak yang menggunakan gambar. Jadi misalnya ada susunan penulisan rantai makanan, gitu ya. Misalnya dari bakteri, manusia ke hewan, gitu ya, digambarkan, gitu ya. Ada salah satu cara menuliskan graphical abstract di jurnal menggunakan grafiknya itu tidak menggunakan Corel ya, tidak menggunakan Corel, tapi bisa menggunakan PowerPoint. Bagaimana caranya? Let's see a video for 5 minutes.
Hi guys, welcome to a PowerPoint for science. So in this lecture, we're gonna learn how to
jadi menggunakan graphical abstract ya biasanya digunakan pada Elsevier, tapi menggunakan cuma PowerPoint.
So what is the requirement for the graphical abstract? And second, we're gonna learn how to design a graphical abstract, a simple yet effective one. And lastly, I'm gonna show you what are the useful resources that you can use to create the graphical abstract for your application. So let's go ahead and dive into the lecture how to create a graphical abstract. And for the graphical abstract, you just search graphic essay. Use the ratio of 200 high and 500 wide. So the ratio is 2 by 5. So we'll create a box of 2 by 5 ratio. We'll create a box. Height we put 2 and width is 5. And then now we can go to change it to no fill. And the line I will change it into black color. And then now we have this box ratio of 2 by 5 and you can scale it out. So your graphical abstract design will need to fit inside this box. And also they have other requirements like the font and also the file type like TIFF, EPS or PDF. So the good graphical abstract is clear, simple, and deliver the most important point of your research. So here are a few examples of the graphical abstract in Nature Review Journal. So you can see that they have a similar type. So the best one is the one that explains the relationship of different factors like this. So I'm gonna add this picture into our PowerPoint, and I'm gonna show you how we can recreate this graphical abstract. So you can see the ratio is different with our ratio of Elsevier. So in this lecture, we're gonna recreate a portion of this figure. So we're gonna create this portion here. So I'm gonna crop it, and then we're gonna search the picture. So first we're gonna search bacteria icon and choose the icon that we like. So you guys can check out the previous lecture that I showed you the tips and tricks to create a graphical abstract or the figure. So I'm gonna go relatively quick how to do. First we'll remove the background because they have a white background. Yeah. See, you can zoom And then we will change color to prevent the copyright issue. So we get green, blue, and we will change it to blue. And make it smaller, rotate it around, and it's more or less new figure. So to copy, you can hold Alt, or in the new version, you can hold right click and drag it, so you can quickly duplicate any figure or shapes. Very cool feature. So I'm gonna go fast forward and show you how to do the rest of the graphical abstract. Gonna search for human, drag it in, change color, search for a predator in the alignment, maybe the one that like chasing. We need to remove background, remove all the white part, and now it's good. Make it smaller and change the color. So now we need to create a curved arrow that represent interaction between them. You can choose arc and hold shift to make it ratio. So the best way to create is make it circle like this, and then we will duplicate it. So at the end you can create a perfectly circle relationship. So adjust it and turn it back to corner like this, and then I'll right click, you can duplicate it, put it on top, and then you can adjust the weight and start like this. Just drag the yellow dot, and then I'll right click to duplicate it, and then adjust the yellow dot for the start and end point. So you can see that we create the perfect circle of relationship among them. So we will just make a small adjustment to make it center, a little bit on the right, and choose the three arc, and then we will change to the arrow. So shape arrows and choose two side arrows, and increase the width of the line maybe to 4 points. So you can see now we have a perfect circle. And then I would choose the neutral color. I choose gray. And now you can add text box to the requirement font of the journal. So this time I'm gonna choose zero. Sorry, not this will be pathogens. And change to maybe 14 point font. And I put E to centralize it. And maybe change it to gray. So you can copy this is human, and then right click, drag to copy. We have editors. So you can see that we can quickly create this graphical abstract, which is very clear, simple, but shows the interaction of the three factors. And what we're missing is the title box in the middle. So create a box, and in the nature style, we'll choose gradient fill. You can choose radial and then center it. So you can adjust this until it's clear, and you can put edit text or just simply copy the text box. So this figure shows the evolutionary pressures. So we can adjust it. So we're all done. You can see this is very powerful abstract. So to export it, you click File, Export, move it to desktop, and I will choose JPEG or TIFF or PNG. So JPEG, and you can always increase this, maybe like 3000, and it will keep the ratio of the width and height. And to export it, you have the very high quality JPEG. So you can see that when I zoom in, it's still not breaking. So you can check the DPI, make sure it's 300 DPI. So you can see that this is how you can manually create the graphical abstract. But they have another program, is mindthegraph.com. So this is the perfect online software that you can use to create a graphical abstract. So after you log in, you can choose icon, and you can search all the icons here. For example, bacteria. So all of these icon and photo is free of copyright, so you can freely use it and just choose the one that fit for your research. So the next one will be human.
Human.
So this software is mainly designed.
Jadi di sini kalian bisa download juga ya di webnya mindthegraph.com. Kalian bisa mengambil beberapa gambar-gambar yang itu bebas dari copyright, jadi bebas dari plagiarism. Jadi boleh bebas di sini. Biasanya kalau gambar-gambar yang terpasang di internet itu kan ada copyrightnya ya, yang kalau kalian ambil semena-mena bisa kena plagiarism check. Tapi kalau di sini kalian bisa dengan bebas ya. Tapi amannya memang tadi diganti ya. Amannya memang kalian nanti diganti dengan warna biar tidak kelihatan copyrightnya. Oke, saya rasa itu the last sessions for the English class today. Kita ketemu lagi minggu depan ya. See you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.